Welcome to our State of the Game. Today we have a very special guest with us. This is your, I believe, second time coming on Game of Roses. With us is Love is Blind's Nick Thompson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Do I sound okay?
Yeah, sound great.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make
Yeah, man, it's our pleasure to have you. I know there has been, last time we had you on, you and Jeremy Hartwell had just kicked off the UCAN Foundation. You had just launched it. And that obviously was a foundation that is designed basically to help reality performers, A, know what their rights are, B, help kind of usher them through the process and give them any kind of support they might need in terms of mental health and all that kind of stuff. And just generally make life better for people who are on reality TV shows so that they're not at the whim of these malicious producers. So a lot has happened since then. Jeremy Hartwell filed a class action lawsuit against Netflix that got settled for $1.4 million. That happened sometime last summer, right?
Yeah, it was like last summer or fall that it finally settled, and we actually all the cast members just got their notifications about it maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's
wow.
How did you get
along.
the notification?
Snail mail.
They sent you a check in the mail?
No, there's no check yet. You have so since it's a class action, it's like basically here's a couple pieces of paper explaining what your rights are to opt out, how much you're estimated to get from it. And then I think it's April. I could check if you want, but I think it's like April that you have to opt out. And then after that, you should get your check. So, like a year after it's settled. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, the fact that it covered so many people and really kind of set the stage, I think, for some of the stuff that's coming next is ultimately the good thing about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I took away from it is like, this is the first time any of these streamers or big network studios, production companies, anything have really been held legally accountable for the actions they're taking against the players. And it at the very least seems like a crack in the dam, and hopefully the tidal wave is coming. I don't know if that's how you guys view it too.
I think we have had I love the cracks in the dam. I think that's so true because I think there's been so many efforts from not just me or not just us, but efforts from people, in the Bravo universe and everywhere to kind of start taking back rights and holding them accountable and doing it from a legal perspective. Whereas before, you would find people that would oftentimes maybe speak out about their experience or speak out about their edit. But ultimately what would happen is they would get dragged into court by the production company, or they would, get a cease and desist and stop. Exactly. Yeah. And even us at the UCAN Foundation being able to help her get attorneys so she could fight back, where before that, she probably wouldn't have had any idea where to start and just been dragged into arbitration and a completely one-sided power dynamic. So I think that's the part that's kind of gross when you think about it. You've got
100%.
Like a production company with endless resources and contract that's 99.9% in their favor. You don't even stand a chance.
And that, for those who don't know with that situation, Renee Poche sued them for a lot of different claims about being, I think was hers the one that had wrongful imprisonment?
So there was, go ahead.
No, you tell us. You're the expert.
So there was another person from Renee's season who sued for wrongful imprisonment. And then Renee was speaking out about her experience of being on the show and being cut out completely and the dangerous situation she felt she was in. And I'm sure if you want to talk to her, she can tell you the details of that story. But she was the one that was sued for $4 million through arbitration and then countersued with her attorneys. And I hope they sort that out soon.
And the lawsuit this is Netflix and Kinetic Content suing her for $4 million because what? She broke the NDA to talk about her experience, basically?
Exactly. Which primarily, I mean, there's a lot of feelings, I'm sure. And I've talked to Renee several times, but there's a lot of feelings, I'm sure, of kind of being in this show and going through this experience and then just being like, by and large, cut out of it. Yeah. And then to have all of the negative experience that she had, or some of the unsafe situations that she allegedly claims she was put in, like that's a whole different dynamic, and that's your working conditions and that's your safety at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like she's just complaining about getting cut out or going against the edit. There was a lot of things that she's explained about her experience that are very upsetting to hear, someone having to go through that.
Yeah.
It's extremely upsetting. And when you think about getting sued for $4 million because you're speaking up about your safety, that's not what you want.
No.
You want people to feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, to be able to feel safe to say that. And if you're looking at the, being targeted, you won't speak out because you're like, well, I can't afford to get sued. They don't pay the cast members $4 million on Love is Blind.
No.
None of them have that money.
This is news to me.
No. So, and a lot of people too, they go on these shows, right? And I know a few that have, like, I personally know a few, and I've talked to others who have, and myself have like had issues with their job and chose to do this. And I think there's even several people that maybe quit their job to go do this. And I don't think Renee did any of that. But if you think about the sacrifices that you make to go and film this show for, 7-8 weeks, whatever that might be, and then to have your experience completely disregarded due to that power dynamic and an unfair contract, it's pretty upsetting. Again, I keep saying that word, but it's upsetting to hear that, they'll come after someone who over $4 million that they're never going to get just to prove that they have the power.
Yeah. She's an example. So every other cast member who now comes through Love is Blind has that hanging over their head that, like, if you say something on a podcast they don't like, you get sued for $4 million. So nobody's going to say anything. And we see this in Bachelor too, what you're talking about with nobody getting paid, but you're forced to take off months of work that can mean potentially the end of a job or maybe even a career that you then have to pick up the pieces if they cut you out of the show and you get no benefit out of it. Like with Renee Poche, it's my understanding that she does go to the altar with a guy, or at least gets to the point where she's living in an apartment with the guy. Turns out the guy has a gun. She feels unsafe. This is all, from things that are on the internet. No. And then the show, instead of even putting that in the show and giving her the opportunity to capitalize off the, potentially monetize the fame that comes with it, get some influencer gigs or whatever, they just eliminate her presence in the show so that she receives no benefit. And that strategy seems to be kind of ubiquitous across all reality shows. We see it time and time again in Bachelor where, some allegation will come out against a guy, a restraining order or whatever, some kind of like bad picture of him doing something racist in his past. And instead of addressing it, they just sweep it under the rug, because addressing it means they have to essentially admit we made bad casting or we made bad producing. And they just don't do that. But, hopefully that's...
And most people who watch Love is Blind have no idea that this has happened.
No, and I think it's very interesting because there's this season they blend together, and I don't watch them, so it's even harder. But like I think it was 2 seasons ago, or it might have been last season, and it was the reunion, and Nick and Vanessa, who I have had nothing but great experiences with them, but they were kind of calling out people for coming on the show for the wrong reasons. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, where's the accountability for the producers and the casting agents and the production company and the type of people they're attracting? Because they do a thorough background check. They do, psychological examinations. They do all of these thorough interviews. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many interviews I went on. I don't even remember. It was just, some of them were like 2 hours. Some of them were just chatting with your producer for 2 hours a week beforehand, telling every horrible relationship experience you've ever been in. Like all of these things, they know. So for me to think and accept that it's on the people who are coming on the show is just not acceptable for me, because if you're doing all of this thorough background and you're claiming, that this show is about finding people love, which is, by the way, what they sell you as I think they sell you different things when they're casting you based on your personality and what would get you the most interested in it. I got sold on finding love and all of that, and all of, oh, well, maybe this is the experiment that will work. But when you're doing that and then you're not protecting people's safety, literal safety, and that's physical, that's mental, that's all of that, you're not doing a service to your audience. You're not doing a service to the cast who's making you all of this content for very little monetary value that you're going to make millions, if not billions off of. And then it's going to go, in some cases, ruin people's lives or cause them serious mental or physical distress. And it's all for the entertainment of others. And they don't want to even take responsibility for the people that they are casting.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing to me. It's like victim blaming.
It really is just about greed. And it boils down to, or you can trace it back to, at any rate, in the 90s, there was a talk show called The Jenny Jones Show. I don't know if you're familiar with this case.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a case where she did an episode that was people revealing their secret crushes. And one of the secret crushes were these two guys that were friends. And the one guy told the other guy, I've had a crush on you for the last 2 years or whatever. Oh my God, the crowd goes wild, all that kind of stuff. It was very much in the vein of like 90s sensationalist talk show, kind of Jerry Springer type stuff. That guy ends up killing the guy a few days later who came out to him and said, I had a crush on you. That guy's family then sues the Jenny Jones Show and Warner Brothers, who was the studio that produced it. They win the lawsuit. Warner Brothers then appeals it. They win the appeal. So it essentially sets legal precedent that means these production companies, these studios, are completely in the clear for anything that happens to you outside of literally the set of shooting. Now, where you get into interesting gray areas with like a show like Love is Blind, they don't shoot everything, but they are putting you in the situation. So you are living with the person in this apartment, but they may not be there shooting. And if they're not liable for anything that happens when there's not cameras rolling. And that's kind of like legally where that is. But don't they
always have like the security cam rolling, like in the living room and stuff?
You could speculate. I have speculated. I don't know for sure, but there's definitely times where like, wait a minute, there definitely were not cameras around when that was said or that was talked about. That's definitely a thing. And then, you wonder, is it they're hearing it from someone else, or if there is something in the room? I'll say too, and this has been kind of like, like talked about the death.
Got a Game of Thrones or Silo.
Like when we were in my ex and my scene in Mexico, I don't know how they had all that audio that they did for that scene because I was the only one mic'd. And those mics are really directional because you're wearing them all the time. So they want to pick you up clear and then get rid of everything around you. And so I watched that scene. I don't watch it anymore, but when I would watch that scene, I was like, how did they get all of that audio? Because at one point I even took my mic off and threw it. So it makes you wonder, like, are the rooms mic'd? Are the apartments
100%.
mic'd?
100%.
And then you
I would assume that they are.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, you have to.
And,
you have to assume.
Something that when you're talking about basically this billion-dollar corporation going up against Renee Poche, there is this ongoing kind of looming threat because they are so much bigger than you and you're like just a measly contestant in the situation. But it's in the contract that they can sue you if you don't make it to the altar, basically, if they're following you. But they're like, oh, but we never enforce it. But it's just like, there's the threat of it in there. Yeah. You'll have to pay $50,000. Maybe we'll choose to enforce it, And it's like, they could take that out if they're not ever going to use it, but they don't.
Right. Well, allegedly they did. And then I've seen later contracts and it was still in there, which I think is, I haven't seen like the most recent season contract, but it wasn't removed in the last one I saw. What are they on season 8 now? Right. So I think it was probably season 6, maybe was the one I saw. But what's interesting is like, why is it in there? And why are all these things they're never going to do and never going to enforce in there? Oh, well, they've always been in there. Time to change always. Just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean that's the way we should always do it. Right. But they're in there to plant that seed in the back of your head. And then they take someone like Renee and they're trying to make an example out of her. And for what? Like, what did she do that was so terrible? I didn't see anything that she did that was so terrible. Like, they put her in that situation and then told her she can't talk about it. So
it's wild.
There's no accountability or responsibility whatsoever for the safety or people who have been a victim speaking out. And I think that's such an archaic way of viewing things. And really, dampens a lot of the progress we've made about people being able to speak about what their experience has been and traumatic events or abuse that have happened to them.
Totally. I also think it's just a strange, from a creative standpoint, it's a weird way to go about producing your media, that you want the stars. Like I view all reality stars basically as like professional sports players on a team. And it would be like if the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles, not the coach, maybe the owner, came out and just said, we own you. And if you do anything against our will, we'll sue you for $4 million. Have a good game. You know, it's like,
have a good game.
How can you expect any of these reality performers to be delivering the best performances, therefore making the best media, if they're under some kind of constant legal or contractual threat? I just don't understand from the very base level why they would do it.
I think you're right about that, but I think the level of control is so important to them because of the dynamics of this show and shows like The Bachelor, where you are putting people in a completely manufactured environment. And I've heard from several producers that have worked on different shows. I've heard from like production assistants, storyline producers. A lot of this stuff is already written out and predetermined, and their goal is just to get you to start talking about it. So for them to put you in such a manufactured environment and expect you to like, I think of the Wedding Crashers scene where the kid is like, make me a bicycle clown with the with the balloon. If you remember that, like, that's what it feels like. It's like you're in a zoo and you're being told, make me a bicycle out of a balloon animal, because that's what they've scripted for you. And that's what your storyline is. And they'll find a way to get you to do that. And a lot of times there is no way to do that without abusing people. I mean, I've heard several stories from people on Married at First Sight, 90 Day Fiance universe shows, and they will not let someone take a phone call from their kid who's calling over and over until they say what they want the cast member to say. And so then, you're a mother or a father, and you may have an emergency with your child, and they're not going to let you take that phone call until you give them what they're looking for from a content perspective. And without the domination, one-sided, grand $50K if you leave, $4 million arbitration suits if you speak out about it, there would be far more people speaking out about it. So it's another lever that they have to control you in an already highly controlled environment, so that you don't talk about how controlled it is. Because and give the secret sauce recipe away, right? And in Bachelor
Sorry.
I was just going to say, in Bachelor also, what you're talking about, that pre-scripted identity, that starts in casting. They're like, this is the villain, this is the fool, this is the whatever. And if you come into the game and you don't play the role they want you to play, like if you can see that, oh shit, they're lining me up to be the villain, I'm not going to do that. They want you to say something in an ITM and you're like, no thanks. They just get rid of you immediately. So it's like you kind of are completely beholden to this thing they've pre-scripted if you want to get benefit out of it. And then you have to start doing this thing in your head where you're like, well, shit, they're going to turn me into the villain, but maybe I can come back on Paradise. If I do what they say, maybe I'll at least get screen time. And now you're having to do the impossible math.
Or get on House of Villains.
Yeah, House of Villains, whatever. But you're having to try to figure out, like, is it worth me becoming a villain in this season to maybe have a potential career as a reality star, or is it going to destroy my life if I become a villain? And there's no way of really knowing that because the edit is completely in their hands. It's wild.
And then you can't speak differently about it. No, you can't speak differently about it. There's people who are being, and by the way, like, now I'm going to probably sound a little too conspiratorial, but
not for Chad.
Yeah, no such thing, sir.
So I had this like huge, real, I guess like a reality check, I'll say. But what is so interesting about reality TV that I've learned over the last couple of years, as I'm getting all this behind the scenes stuff different than my own experiences, is that it isn't about what you're watching on Netflix or on ABC or on Bravo or whatever. It's actually about, I mean, that's the base content, but the community plays such a big role in moving these storylines forward and giving you little extra pieces of content to talk about, to speculate about on Reddit, to post about on Instagram, to go follow content creators like yourself. And then you guys are creating, and you make such good content for such a long time now about these shows, especially The Bachelor, right?
That's so nice.
And,
Thanks.
but then you've got like the lower level people who are probably making content about you and critiquing what you say and critiquing. And then you've got the people that are on Reddit and the people that are on Instagram or the people that are on Twitter, and they're all talking and gossiping about what like this middle line of not that good content is. And then what's happening is you have Reddit threads that are being moderated by the production companies. So like the Love is Blind threads, everything related to UCAN always gets deleted. And
wait. They are the moderators on the forums?
Or they are in control of the moderators or something to that extent, because they're moderating it. And then what you find that happens, and I actually looked into this from, oh my God, I'm blanking on her name. Anyway, I heard from someone that basically there's like bots or people that'll go into Reddit and they'll just like type words based on what the storyline of that person is. So if someone is being cast as or portrayed as a villain or a bad person or a racist or a sexist or whatever that is, there will be people commenting and putting that word in there to obviously run up the SEO, right? Yep. And then keep those comments towards the top. It's like not just about what the content is on TV. It's about the community involvement.
For sure.
Reinforcing the narrative.
Yeah. Or again, one of the Love is Blind seasons, there was a leak right before the reunion that someone went on and they had a girlfriend or a fiance or something. I forget the details, a couple of years ago.
That was the last two seasons.
Was that? Yeah.
It happened twice.
Those things are getting out because they're being leaked to influencers
and
content creators.
Well, I mean, last season of Love is Blind had the biggest story was the Tyler Francis thing, where he had these 3 kids and he was lying on camera about the nature of the relationship. But then the mother of the children came out and said, no, look, here's a video of him on Thanksgiving or on the kid's birthday or whatever. And that story became too big to contain. Everybody was covering it.
Exactly.
But when they
and then you're speculating and there's rumors and then rumors take on a life of their own.
Absolutely.
You don't even know it's real.
But to your point of like controlling the narrative or the show or the production company controlling the narrative, when they came to the reunion, that couple was held aloft as like one of the A couples because they did get married. And the woman in that couple, Ashley Adoncier, was like standing by her man. And Tyler Francis was like, I've said everything I need to say on this. And they let him skate with that. Then they turn immediately to the guy who had the girlfriend and who was sending, dirty text messages during a sleep study and all this stuff. And they hold him up as like, this is the guy we're going to crucify. Forget this dude who lied about his kids. They're married and they're happy. The process works. However, you are the villain, sir, and we need to kick you in the balls 500 times. And for the astute viewer, for anybody who's following what you're talking about, this like peripheral media that serves to like forward these stories outside the context of the main document of the show, if you're watching that shit, you can see right through the game that is being played by the Lachey's, who are just out there like, so you're the bad guy, he's the good guy. And it's like, you're all the bad guy. This is insane. You're all the bad guy. Yeah. All that
We're the bad guy watching.
It just keeps escalating every season. And that's like, to tie it back to some of the other stuff we were talking about earlier, at what point is like something really seriously bad going to happen to someone because of this?
Yeah.
Right. We've already seen people die by suicide on others from Love Island, from several other shows. Yeah. We've already seen that. We can, dance around what was causing it or whatever. But I can tell you from my own experience, and I'm very mentally strong and very resilient. But I mean, there were moments when I was like, everything, like I could handle this in real life, but I can't handle it with the world commenting on it every single day.
No.
It's just a different level.
Even people who haven't done it have discussed, wanting to do it based on things that have happened in the show. One of my favorite oddities is that the Lachey's always are calling it an experiment. And I'm like, wait, so is this a scientific experiment? And I saw some comment online that was like, if this is a science experiment, it is the most unethical setup if it were treated as that, it would be so unethical, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. But they're allowed to do it because it's reality TV. It's great.
I think that's spot on. And I don't think you could find many psychologists or psychiatrists or therapists that would look at this and say, this is genuine.
Absolutely.
experiment.
I mean, I've heard tale. I don't know if this is true or not, but I have heard this in the back channels of the Bachelor world. They have an on-set therapist, and it has been told to me that that therapist relays anything told to them directly to the producers. I mean, that I don't even think is legal, let alone ethical, you know?
No.
So
I've heard that too, by the way. So
yeah, I mean,
other shows.
Of other shows, but particularly of The Bachelor. And I've also heard in an interesting thing with Love is Blind, you as the person who went through the psychological exam and should have HIPAA rights to your background check and your, or not your background check, your psychological evaluation. I can't get mine. They won't give it to me. So it's like they're actually using those psychological exams, in my belief, they're using those exams and those evaluations to build their characters that they're going to cast for the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
And so no matter how you look at it, like there's ethical considerations here. Like one of the things we're doing with the foundation is trying to have Dr. Isabel Morley, who's the psychologist that is on our board of directors and a co-founder. She's taking steps to work with the APA to get like codes of ethics around working in reality TV in the mental health profession because of things like this, because you're sitting there and you're incredibly vulnerable and you're talking to this person who's supposed to be your advocate as a therapist, right? You're supposed to have a very strong therapeutic relationship with, and everything you tell them is getting fed back.
Yeah.
Like that there's very, very big codes being broken there. They just haven't been written for reality TV specifically yet. Yeah. So I think we're at a place now where there's enough reality TV that we need to have some codes of ethics around it for mental health professionals.
100%.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And to that end, right now, the National Labor Relations Board has this kind of open case against Netflix that is built off the back of the work you guys are doing at UCAN. And they're essentially saying reality performers are employees, and therefore they have to be protected by employee rights in whatever state or country that may take place in. Can you talk a little bit about where that case is, what your involvement in it is, how you're helping them?
Absolutely. So I actually just talked about this on the Wall Street Journal podcast that came out yesterday.
Nice.
Thank you. The interesting thing is they filed. So back in what are we in 2025, 2023, after we started the UCAN Foundation, one of the things that I was looking at was, is this contract legal? Like, are there pieces in this contract that, from a labor perspective, from a human rights perspective, are there things here that are illegal? And this kind of prompted me from the lawsuit that Jeremy had. And then this was this later? No, this was, my years. The years blend together for you guys. Like the last few
everything
years,
since the pandemic is like 1 6-month period to me.
And January was 10 years.
Totally.
So
yeah, exactly. You're spot on. But with Bethany Frankel and the Reality Reckoning and doing all of this with lawyers and trying to sue for mistreatment and abuse and all of that, like there's an element to that. But ultimately what that does is that gets you a settlement, or it gets you, whatever you're asking for in damages, but it doesn't fundamentally change the foundation
for the people who are going in,
right, of how these shows are made and why they're made the way they're made. And so, I know a little bit about labor because I think we talked about this last time, but like I'm a lefty, come from the working class. Like my dad built elevators and now he's not elevators, refrigerators. And now he's, an electrician. So like I come from this background of, I was in a union at 15 when I worked at the grocery store. So like, I know how these things work a little bit. And so then I realized I got a W-2 from the production. And that clicked in my head. I'm like, that means you're an employee. Well, why would that be issued? So then I was thinking with Jeremy's case, it was violation of California labor law, where they have probably some of the most pro-worker labor, if not the most, in the country. So there's like overtime pay requirements. Like if you work a certain number of hours, you're automatically an employee. There's all sorts of things in California that aren't in other cases. So then I was thinking like, well, maybe they filed in California with a W-2, so they weren't violating labor laws, but then our contract said that we're contractors. So there's like a conflict here. And I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. And then I talked to someone who also joined our board who works in the Teamsters Union in Minnesota. And so she's like, I think you should file this with the NLRB. And so I talked to her and I decided to file a charge with the NLRB under the idea that because of the amount of time we worked, because of the way that they pretty much take over control of you for 3 weeks, and then significantly after that, once you get out of the pods and come back from your trip. And then I was thinking to myself, I'm like, all of this stuff kind of makes me think that this contract might have us misclassified. And if we can get a classification of being an employee from the National Labor Relations Board, all of a sudden there's going to be now there's 30 plus. I didn't think it was going to be 30 plus. There's 30 plus clauses in that contract that would be illegal if we were classified as employees.
Wow.
And so that's what the NLRB conducted their investigation for. It was also something that we at the foundation helped Renee Poche do. So this is her and my joint case against Kinetic and Delirium regarding the National Labor Relations Board and Love is Blind. But we've also helped other cast members from other shows who went through similar experiences that kind of met this sort of criteria that's the same, and help them do the same thing. But what we need to do with this case is we need this to set a precedence, right? Because it only covers Love is Blind. But if it covers Love is Blind, all of a sudden we have precedence. And now other people from other shows can do the same thing. And theoretically, when you get that employee, and I'm trying to keep this light, but when you get that employee designation and a judge rules that you're an employee, and they can appeal it all the way to the Supreme Court, which is probably what's going to happen if it goes in our direction. But you get that, then you can unionize, then you get paid an hourly rate, then you get overtime, then you get mandated breaks, then you can have collective bargaining for residuals, all of these things that you can't do because of that contract basically being one-sided and not labor friendly at all, and not even treating you like you're a worker. Then, all of that stuff foundationally has to change. And so that was why I decided to file the charge. That was why I decided to help others do that, because there is no unionization. There is no collective bargaining. There are no residuals. There are no rights. There are no breaks. If you sign that contract, you are stuck in those NDAs. You can't talk about your working condition until you change the classification from contractor to employee by the federal government. And that's what I'm trying to do with this.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I was like, this is a different level now. When you've got the National Labor Relations Board filing this like formal complaint, it's like, that's just a different deal, because now it's not just people on these shows, which can be disregarded by the public, I think, as like, oh, they're just whining, whatever, they didn't get enough screen time. This is like a giant governmental body saying, no, something bad is happening here. And
I think the churn of that is like factoring in, because it's like, especially on Love is Blind, it's not the same character. So you can settle with one group and they'll be quiet, but it continues on. So I assume you're not watching the show anymore, but Love is Blind. Yeah, totally makes sense. But Love is Blind season 8, Minnesota, starts tomorrow, Friday. If you could tell all of the players who are about to have their lives turned upside down during this watch back period, one thing, what would it be?
I found that the most helpful thing for me, and I actually was focused on this even before my season came out, is you have to separate yourself from what you see on TV and not let it define you. Because what you're seeing on there is highly curated. It's a lot of times not real, not having the right context. You didn't say this to that person, you said it to another person, and there's some editing tricks, especially in those pods, that they can do. So try and just separate yourself from the edit, and remember that, like, your truth, and the people that love you and care about you, no matter what happens, are still going to love you and care about you, no matter how you're portrayed on TV. And then I would also, as a second piece, just tell people, be kind to others, be kind to your cast members. Viewers, be kind to the cast members, even if they do stupid things or are, not being the best kind of people. Like, it's a lot of pressure and you don't know, even if you think you might know.
Yeah.
Yeah, great advice. We always tell everybody that too. Don't send mean DMs. If you want to send a DM, send one of support saying, I loved what you're doing this season, or I feel sorry for how they cut you or something, but never send a mean DM to anybody on these shows. Because like you're saying, you have no idea what the reality of the situation is. Literally none.
I didn't even think about that. The cross-cutting with the pods, making it even more likely that you're going to get your dialogue used in a different situation because you can't tell who they're talking to.
Yeah. And if you guys followed, again, this was 2 seasons ago. This was Charlotte, Matthew Dubala. I had him on my podcast and he was cut into a villain. They kept making it look like he was walking out on women during dates.
Yeah.
And it like completely disrupted his entire life in really bad ways. And he never did that. They just edited him leaving the pods and made it look like he was doing it to women. And he didn't do it to one woman. And by the way, they all came out and said that to be true. So it wasn't just him, claiming he was getting a bad edit, trying to hide poor behavior. Like, the cast thankfully came to his aid and defended him. And that's what I also think cast members should do. You guys should stick together no matter what happens, because at the end of the day, you guys went through a lot together. And, you don't have to like everyone, but like, I think you kind of have to recognize you're all going through this and you're all going through it together, even if you're going through it differently.
100%. And I think in Love is Blind world specifically, there's so much time that elapses between when you shot your season and when you're called back to do that reunion. It's almost a year in some cases.
Yeah.
As a collective.
Minnesota was last spring, so it's been almost a year.
Yeah. Wild. And the reunion probably won't air for another month-ish. You have so much time.
By the way, they'll film that like the week before. So they'll have seen it and then they get to go in all hot and bothered. So like for us, I'm not sure exactly how it is now, if it's changed, but like for us, the last wedding episode didn't air. And the day we were traveling, we all got encrypted iPads with the last episode. And then the next day we filmed the reunion. So people were just fresh off of, how did this thing end?
Yeah.
It's, not great for everyone. So they just get you all like triggered up and wound up and then heading into that reunion. And that's how you get all that fun.
I think the most power collectively any seasonal kind of group of players has is going into that reunion. Right now, anybody who's on this Minnesota season, you should be talking to each other constantly about the edit, about what is real and what is not. And you should go to that reunion loaded for bear. When you sit on those couches, you should have everything planned out that you want to say or talk about or not. And don't let the producers and the Lachey's control what happens in that, because you have complete control over it.
Unionize.
And you guys should you maybe should consider unionizing, because right now with where we are in the NLRB, you can. Yeah,
exactly. And the work that you guys are doing at UCAN is also absolutely phenomenal and integral to all this. We can't thank you enough for doing that, because we've been trying to, from our little meager pulpit here, trying to like kind of preach that for the past multiple years. And it's just, I feel like it's a very important thing that has to happen. I think it is going to happen in the very near future, largely because of what you're doing at UCAN.
Well, thank you. I know I appreciate that. We all do. And I think so too. It's like you said earlier, there's cracks in the dam, and you can plug that one, but then there's going to be another one, and then there's another one, and then you can't plug them all.
For sure.
Yes. And hopefully we'll have you back soon to talk about more of those unpluggings as we get some updates, and let us know how we can support, because we are obsessed with reality TV, but we want it to be made in an ethical way. Which shouldn't be that hard a bar to cross.
Like, we're all dramatic without the manufactured stories. Like, think about, I think about this a lot. I think about The Bachelor and Love is Blind, probably the most of the reality TV shows, right? And I think about like how controlled the environments are, and how people are going to be kind of dysregulated from their everyday life anyway. So you may not get the extreme drama of casting someone who has 3 kids and a girlfriend and lied about all of it. But you're going to get the drama of people that are actually trying to navigate relationships or potential relationships with multiple people, and in this highly controlled environment where they're tired, they're stressed, and they're hungry, and they're, even if they're not hungry, right? Like, because we're feeding them now, but there's going to be natural drama that comes out of that, and it's going to be more relatable and more authentic, and help people navigate new relationship conflicts, maybe with an actual counselor that can be like, here's how you can communicate when you're highly stressed. Learn how to,
I think that would be great. And like show people how, like what actually happens in couples counseling and how to have better relationships and stuff. Yes. I do think the format, just like Bachelor, lends itself to the drama. You don't need to be withholding food. I did like that they added a bunch of food in the reunion special a couple seasons ago. I think in response to this whole thing.
Totally. On Love is Blind, it's like, I call it food propaganda. Mm-hmm. It's just beautiful montages of the most colorful food you could imagine.
But they really did only start doing that in response to the allegation that people weren't being fed. It's absolutely wild. Like, that's how they solve the problem. Is not by like looking at the problem and fixing it. It's by showing the facade of a solution, which is what all reality TV is anyway.
Entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. But Nick, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Please let everybody know where they can find all your stuff and help support UCAN.
Absolutely. You can find UCAN on Instagram. Just search UCAN Foundation. Our website
How do you spell UCAN?
UCAN Foundation.
Great.
And then we have theucanfoundation.org is our website, and get involved there. I talk a lot about it on my social too, which is Thompson 513. You can just search my name. I appreciate the support, and I appreciate you guys wanting to catch up on this, and always kind of being a advocate for reality TV as workers and people that should not be exploited or mentally or physically harmed for entertainment.
Totally. I mean, to me, it's like I said, it's like professional sports. You have the best professional sports when the players are happy and well taken care of. Then they can play at the highest degree. It's like when you're beating them down, you get bad product, in my opinion. So it's a win-win, I think, if we can change all this stuff.
I think so too.
Thanks again, Nick, for joining us. And
you'll get more people wanting to apply when it doesn't look like a hellscape to be a part of.
It is funny because I have had people that I've talked to now that are like, I was going through it, I was doing this, and I don't even tell them not to do it. I just try to tell them what to expect. Yeah. Right. Because it's not my place to tell people what to do, but people are kind of waking up to what could really happen if they go on this show, and it isn't just all 15 minutes of fame and influencer deals.
Yeah, God. Well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully that reality union is going to happen soon. But yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll have you back soon to update on any of this stuff.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
No problem. We can't thank Nick Thompson enough for joining us for that incredible interview. A lot of insight given about what is the future of potential unionization for reality players. Now, we talked
so much. He has the tea seller of all tea sellers, it sounds like.
and gaining tea by the second, because I think any player who gets disgruntled by any of these franchises comes to him, and rightly so. But we mentioned something in that conversation with him about the current players in Love is Blind Season 8. We are speaking to you directly now, if you're listening to this podcast. You have
Dear Love is Blind Minnesota Season 8. Are you listening? Turn up the volume.
Hopefully someone is. You have the most power you're ever going to have right now during this watch back. You should all be contacting one another and coming up with a coherent game plan to take complete control of the reunion. It will be the only time that you're going to have control over what goes into that edit potentially. If you all come together and you say, don't tell the producers this before you get there, literally show up to the reunion, then all come together. Outfits. Yeah, put on the outfits, whatever you want to do, and then come together as a group and tell the producers, we want 10 minutes at the beginning of this reunion to talk about a reality performers union. It all must be aired and in the edit, and we need that in writing, or we're going to sit there and say nothing. Good luck with your reunion. The first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. You can make some kind of a demand, and you can be the season that gets this ball into the end zone. Right now, the momentum is building with Bethany Frankel, with everything that's happening with UCAN, with the National Labor Relations Board, all this stuff. The ball's on the 1 yard line.
everything is set up. Exactly. It is all set up to just do this one thing, but it requires an entire cast of a show to unionize.
You need whoever the A couple is to be on your side too. So you're going to have to.
We're especially talking to you.
Yeah.
You need A couple. You're going to get a lot of benefits, but please help us in this.
Absolutely.
Please. And enjoy your love.
And it will be, even if it is unsuccessful this time around, it will be successful the next time, and you will go down in the history of Love is Blind as the most influential cast that has ever existed. It is a way for players who might not have gotten a lot of screen time to align yourselves with a movement taking place in reality television to make the working conditions better for everybody who's in these shows, yourselves included, assuming that you go on to other third wave shows, which many of you will. There's going to be some people off this season who wind up on the next season of Perfect Match. That's a guarantee. Well, not the next season. I think that's already shot, but the one after, or maybe they already shot it with them because they shot this season a year ago too. At any rate,
you are workers. You are making so much money for these corporations. You deserve to have good working conditions. You deserve to have food. You deserve to have water. You deserve to have breaks. All of the rights that people doing work on other types of content creation already, like the WGA, which is protecting writers, like the Screen Actors Guild, which is protecting actors. Reality players don't have this. They are at the whim and mercy. And it's like, Chad and I do not want to watch unethically made television. It is not, we want it to be made in a way that is protecting the people. And we do truly believe that will create the best content.
Yeah,
ultimately.
Absolutely. I couldn't even get through Beast Games. I had to bail. Episode 5 or 6, I think. I was just like, I can't keep watching this. It's too sinister. Which is
so
that's saying
happy
something. I've watched every season of The Bachelor and I can't watch one season of Beast Games. All right, let's move on. Again,
too sinister for this demon.
Yeah, look at my demonic face now. It looks like I've just risen from hell and I still have the burn marks to show it.
I just got out of Beast Games. But yeah, Love is Blind season 8. There are groups that you can get connected with, but I would align all of you, meet up and align on the strategy. You don't need technically everyone, but you really do need that A couple. You really do need the stars of the season. I don't think pod squads can really accomplish this because you need to be the people that are the important roles at the reunion. But I do think we can do this. Like when I actually think about Chris Harrison getting fired.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of factors that led into that. Obviously, the main one is Michael Strahan.
I mean, the main one is Chris Harrison.
I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding. Oh, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if we want to give Strahan all the credit.
I thought that was so... He blames Strahan.
He does?
I digress.
Jesus.
He's gone off about Strahan. I mean, I don't know who he really believes, but regardless, I've been completely derailed.
Yeah, me too. I'm just going back to that era.
That Bachelor in Paradise season, the season right before Katie Thurston took over as crown, all of the players on Matt James' season unionized and put out the exact same parasocial play supporting Rachel Lindsay. And then the previous Bachelorette cast members also put out their own joint play. And guess what? Katie Thurston then did a tweet.
Yeah.
All of these things all combined, he did his thing to Michael Strahan, and he was literally taken off his throne that he had been on for decades. Like, real change can be enacted by the powerless.
And that was all done through social media. What we're suggesting is you take control of the actual show. You can't take control of the season. That's already done. It's shot. They're going to edit it however they want to edit it. And you may become the villain, the fool. You might be the A couple. We don't know how the season will bear out until we watch it. But that reunion is not shot yet. They're going to shoot it in about a month. And you're all going to have to show up to it. You're contractually obligated, but you're not contractually obligated to say or do anything on that set. You can sit there and say nothing. Or every time they ask you a question, you can simply look into one of the cameras and say, we want a union for reality performers, and say nothing else. You can have that be every answer to every question if you want.
Union for reality performers, help me, I've been kidnapped.
Yeah, blink twice. You simply have the most power you're ever going to have in terms of getting that show to do something or to even push this kind of movement forward. And I know the A couples are going to be looking at this like, well, we came out of this as superstars and my life is great and we're married and everything's fine. You have
And
no
they didn't
reason
treat
to
us badly.
Yeah, exactly. But the truth of it is they rely on the A couples to never make waves so that this can continue to happen again and again and again. Some players will receive fair treatment or good treatment. Most will not. And it's the ones who don't that really need the help of everybody coming together collectively to get this done. So hopefully.
Like, for instance, if it were in The Bachelor, it would require a bachelor who did really well to respect people outside the final four and not just say that they are bitter.
Oh, man. Shots fired. Nick Vial, the great one.
Please rate this podcast. Please review this podcast. Please get a friend to listen to us. And then please rate this podcast. Please review this podcast.